Hello, children. Well, it's the next time of the year, isn't it? Sleigh bells ringing, carols singing, just wonderful. Especially I come on Christmas Eve and deliver all the presents to the good children of the Easter Bunny. What you doing here? The chocolate eggs are kind of getting rotten. I don't know how to help with that. That's not my problem. I'm reading a story to the kids. I'm reading a bedtime story to the kids. You can't just interrupt like this when I'm filming something for the kids. A bedtime story. Easter Bunny, don't just hop away. Oh, I guess he just hopped away. Oh. A lot of stuff like that happened over the years. Now, you might know Santa Claus is definitely real. Santa Claus is a real man, which is me, delivering presents to all the kids of the world. But Santa Claus is real, but some people just don't believe in him. And they don't. But this book says how to change a non-believer from a real believer. It's A Miracle on 34th Street classic. It's a very classic movie, which they turned it into a book that I can read. Miracle on 34th Street, a Christmas classic. Let's see if I can get the page. Floats stretched like rainbow along Central Park West. Huge balloons tugged at their ropes, as if to say, "Come on, let's go." Tubas oomped and bass drums boomed as the marching band tuned up. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was about to start. "Look, Mother," Susan explained. She pointed to the Santa's sleigh at the end of the line. Santa was snoring. "Oh no," said Mother. "The parade will start any minute. And Santa's the most important part is the grand final." Mother was in charge of the whole Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. She spent much of the year getting ready so the parade would run just right. But now, moments before the start, Santa was sound asleep in the back of the sleigh. She needed to fix this before the grumpy Mr. Sawyer found out and complained to Mr. Macy. "Excuse me, ma'am," said an elderly, bearded gentleman. "May I be of some help?" Mother took one look at the man and smiled. He was small and round, with a bushy white beard, rosy cheeks, and eyes that twinkled with merriment. He was perfect! Quick as a wink, she helped him into a Santa costume and onto the float. There's a surprise waiting with this man who played Santa at a Thanksgiving parade. There's actually a pretty cool ending, but I can't spoil it if you've only heard the story now. That night, Mother and Susan, their kind neighbor Fred, and the old gentleman gathered around the table for Thanksgiving dinner. Susan couldn't help but ask, "Who are you, sir? And how did you know to help my mother at just the right time?" "Why, I'm Kris Kringle, my dear," the old gentleman said with a wink. "I knew to help because I am indeed Santa Claus." Susan crossed her arms. "I don't believe you. Mother says there's no such thing as Santa Claus or any other silly things children are told in make-believe." Well, Mother of Susan didn't know the true spirit of Christmas, and she didn't believe in Santa Claus. But that will change. I just can't tell you how, because I don't want to spoil the whole book. Because I would spoil the main part. See, I might have to take off a glove to turn off this page. There we go. Chris looked surprised. No Santa Claus, he asked. No make-believe? Surely you've read fairy tales or played house or zoo. Well, Susan shrugged and no, that's not for me, she said. Mother doesn't believe in any of those things, so I don't either. Chris replied, but my dear, make-believing and pretending are what being a child is all about. It's about imagination. It's wood. How would you like to make snowballs in the summertime? How would you like to visit the Statue of Liberty in the morning and in the afternoon fly south with a flock of geese? Susan thought it would be amazing to have such adventures. Come, said Chris. He led her to the living room. I'll teach you to pretend. Ho, ho, ho. In no time, Chris and Susan were a couple of monkeys swinging through the jungle. Ho, ho, ho. Susan had never had so much fun. Well, Susan hesitated. There is one thing. Oh, sorry. Santa missed a page. What would you like for Christmas? Chris asked in between monkey noises. Nothing, said Susan. Come now, Chris smiled kindly. There must be something. Well, Susan hesitated. There is one thing. Her voice grew quiet. I wish we could have a little house in the country with a swing in the backyard. Me and Mother, and well, she glanced sideways to the dining room where Mother laughed with Fred, a family, she whispered. She showed Chris a picture she'd saved. This house, she said, feeling silly. Oh, oh, oh. She will get it. I just can't tell you how. I don't want to spoil too much, so I'm not going to tell you anything else about the story. I'll do my best, Chris promised. But just because every child can't get their wish doesn't mean there's no Santa Claus. Sometimes children wish for things that aren't right for them. Just as I'll try. I want you to believe Santa is real. Susan smiled. Just then, Mother and Fred joined them. You did such a good job today, said Mother to Chris. Mr. Macy would be thrilled if you stayed as to walk as Santa until Christmas. I've got room next door if you need a place to stay, offered Fred. I'd love to have the real Santa Claus stay with me, he said as he winked at Susan. Don't make silly statements like that. To her, Fred whispered. Don't make silly statements like that to her, Fred, whispered Mother. Have some faith, Fred replied. You've just got too much common sense. Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. Chris beamed. Looks like it's all settled. Then he said, I thank you for your kindness. Let's see what the next page is. As the days went by, Susan watched Chris play Santa at the store. She saw him make every child feel special and believe that his or her Christmas wish would come true. Susan heard him talk to children in different languages when they didn't speak English. He even signed to a child who was deaf. Their faces lit up with delight at being understood. How can he know how to speak to everyone? Susan asked her mother. He was truly jolly and kind, Susan knew. His beard was real. She had tugged on it herself. He must be Santa, a darling. That doesn't make him Santa Claus, Mother said. I speak French, but doesn't make me French toast. But even Mother was beginning to wonder. Chris was so cheerful and kind. He was the very spirit of Christmas. But as much as people loved Chris, not everyone was happy with him. Grumpy Mr. Sawyer did not like having Chris around. Mr. Sawyer thought Chris made everyone else at Macy's look bad by comparison. Mr. Sawyer was determined to get rid of Chris. A few days before Christmas, when Macy's was getting jam-packed with lines were at their longest, Mr. Sawyer pointed at Chris and announced to the crowd, "This man thinks he really is Santa Claus." "I am," said Chris. "See," Mr. Sawyer sneered. Mother saw the people were worried. They were murmuring that anyone who believed himself to be Santa Claus must not be thinking clearly and probably shouldn't be working. "Perhaps it'd be best if you go," Mother said sadly. That's very sad. Let's see. Because I hope Chris doesn't go to jail. Let's find out. "Goodbye," Mr. Sawyer said triumphantly. "Have a nice trip back to the North Pole." Chris left Macy's sadly. Why did no one believe? Fred, Susan, and Mother followed Chris outside. "You can't let him treat you this way," said Fred. "We must go to court. I'll represent you and prove that you are indeed Santa. If we win, everyone will know you're the real Santa." "Hooray, I hope this is good." "But if we lose," Fred continued, "you will lose more than your job. You may ruin your good name, and children will stop believing in you." Chris was nervous, but he believed in Fred. He hoped everything would be okay. Susan was nervous too. She liked Chris and didn't want anyone to make fun of him or cause him trouble. This is a pretty serious book. And when the movie was published, the man who directed it posted it in January, not December, because he was trying to show that he thought this story was more about trust and not just based on Christmas itself. And like I said in the last bedtime story, Christmas is being kind, not being a holiday. Christmas is about being kind and loving others and showing you love them by giving gifts to all of them. Well, let's get to the story. You have to finish it before bedtime. The following week in court, Fred called his first witness. It was the prosecutor's son. "Do you believe in Santa is real?" Fred asked the boy. "Yes," said the boy. "My daddy told me Santa's real. And he would never tell me something that isn't so. Would you, Daddy?" The boy looked right at his father. "Of course Santa's real," cried the prosecutor, Mr. Mera. He did not want his son to think he told lies. Fred patted Chris on the back. Mr. Mera had just admitted that Santa was real. "We won," he whispered. "Yay, I hope Santa gets out of jail or the court." Once the young boy left the courtroom, Mr. Mayor said, "But there is no proof this man is Santa Claus." "He's right," said the judge, looking at Fred. "The state of New York is willing to agree that Santa is real, but there is no... But that doesn't mean Mr. Kringle is him." Fred glanced worriedly at Chris. How on earth could he prove that Chris was the one and only Santa? "You have until tomorrow," announced the judge. "We'll look forward to seeing your proof." Pretty strict stuff. Pretty tough. If I was Chris in this book, I would be pretty nervous. Next morning, everyone arrived at the courthouse. Mother and Susan were sitting in the courtroom to show support for Fred and Chris, hoping for a miracle that would help them both. The judge entered the courtroom and began the trial. He asked Fred, "Well, where is your proof?" Fred was quiet. He didn't have any proof. He was up all night and could not think of any answer to his problem. Just then, one of the courtroom doormen came forward and whispered in Fred's ear. Fred's eyes widened. Then he smiled. He gestured toward the door and called out, "Bring them in." "Your Honor," Fred said to the judge, "here is our proof." One postal worker after another paraded into the courtroom, loaded down with bags of mail. Let's see what the mail is. I hope it's some type of proof, but how would mail be proof? Let's find out. They emptied each bag on the judge's desk until it was covered in letters. Every single one was addressed to Santa. The postman had read about the case in the papers and realized it was much faster to reach Santa in New York than to send the letters to the North Pole. "The United States Post Office is an official government agency," said Fred. "It's against the law for them to deliver mail to the wrong person. If they say Chris is Santa, he is. In the face of the overwhelming love and support, no further proof was needed." "Case closed," said the judge. "Merry Christmas, everyone." Wow, I guess Chris was the one and only Santa Claus. There's a couple more pages. Let's see what it is. Chris had a celebration on Christmas Day and invited Susan, Mother, and Fred to come over for the fun and presents. Susan looked and looked, but she did not find her Christmas wish under the tree. Hadn't they proven that Chris was Santa? That Chris was really Santa? Mother tried to reassure Susan by saying, just because things didn't turn out the way you wanted, you still have to believe in people. As Mother, Fred, and Susan were driving home after the celebration, Susan wanted to be happy that the judge had Chris was the real Santa, but if that was so, why hadn't she gotten her Christmas wish? I'd figure it out. I hope Santa has her Christmas wish there. Susan wanted to trust what Mother had said, but she began to whisper, "I believe," over and over. Just then she saw the house of her dreams, the exact one she had shown Chris. "Stop!" she cried. "Stop the car!" The moment the car pulled to a stop, Susan raced into the house with Mother and Fred on her heels. Her bedroom was just as she had imagined. In the backyard and the tree, even the swing. Susan turned and saw Mother with Fred's arm around her. Every part of her Christmas wish was coming true. He really is Santa, she said, eyes shining. He really is. I guess Susan is a believer now. The end. Now, the realest things on earth is the things that you can't see. Just because you've never seen something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Even though you don't see Santa Claus when you go to sleep on Christmas Eve, you can know that he's real because seeing is not believing. Bye-bye. Good night. It's almost bedtime.